Everybody, Ingrid Sparkman here from Southbridge Street Live, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we have banded together with CASA, Golden Crescent CASA of Victoria, for their annual backpack drive. Now I know it's summertime, so this is a crazy time to be thinking about school, but for organizations like CASA, they need to gather materials and supplies for children all year long. So this is it for the next couple of weeks. On Southbridge Live, you're going to see that some of my guests will be bringing in backpacks themselves. If you also would like to donate a backpack or school supplies, you can come by our studio at 1102 North William Street, or you can call me at 361-649-1825, and I'll be happy to come by, pick up backpacks and supplies to help support our local Golden Crescent CASA. Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Southbridge Street Live. I am here with my friend Brandon Wakefield, who just opened a new gym, Satori Mixed Martial Arts. So I'm super excited to have you. Thank you so much for coming. Especially I knew that you were training today and had a rigorous schedule. So I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that you're here. All right. So tell me about just opening a gym.
It's been awesome. It's been stressful, but it has been an amazing experience. I work with a lot of people, and being able to provide a service for them has been really great for me.
So tell me where your new gym is located.
So it's at 1103 East Sabine Street. In Victoria, so that's right behind Domino's.
I was going to say, give me the grill directions.
Yeah, it's right behind Domino's on Lawrence Street. And we're training out of Integrity Defensive Arts right now.
Right.
So that's actually my old instructor's gym that he's allowed us and rented us space to train and continue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on a new gym. That's so fantastic.
I really appreciate it.
I love, supporting, young men and women in their business ventures here. So, okay, I want to go straight into mixed martial arts.
For sure.
What was the tipping point in your life where you're like, this is something that I could do, that I would love?
Right. It's when I was younger, I watched it. It didn't come out until, really popular and mainstream until the 90s. So it's a fairly newer sport, but when I was about 15 or 16, I started watching it on TV, and I always knew, man, that's what I want to do. And then I ended up getting into some problems as an early adult with, just drugs, problems socially, problems with a lot of areas in my life. And so I actually went to a counselor to try to figure out what I should do and what sort of path I should take.
Wow, I really appreciate your candor.
Yeah, and so I ended up going and speaking to a counselor. His name's Rick Torres here in town.
Yes.
And I was telling him my issues and dealing with the problems that I was dealing with, and he opened up his doors in his house to start training me, and he said, if doing this is something you're serious about, I'm willing to commit to you if you're willing to commit to me. And so it really, him offering that to me really opened up a lot of doors for me to be able to actually stop the path I was going on and really pursue something productive.
Oh, Brandon, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it really is incredible when I look at it. And so now opening up a gym myself, it's really shown me that I can do that for other people as well. And so that's very important for me, is to be able to give the same gift that I was given to other people.
Oh,
yeah.
See that right there, and then I'm like, we're done. that's absolutely awesome. Well, what does Mr. Torres? What was his specialty? Was it karate?
So he is versed in, almost every martial art there is. It's crazy. He's got 7 black belts right now in different martial arts, which is super rare to have that many degrees.
Disciplines and so many disciplines.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of work and time it would take to do all that is remarkable. But he mainly focuses on Kyushinryu Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, and then Aikido as well. Those are the 3 main ones. He also does, he's done karate. He's also done, he does Budishin Jiu-Jitsu and a lot of Japanese arts. So he's well versed in almost everything.
Could you give our viewers just an idea, example, or a small definition of, first of all, mixed martial arts, and then, of course, the disciplines that you just described, or the ones that you're most familiar with?
For sure. Well, mixed martial arts is a culmination of all the different martial arts. So the cool thing about mixed martial arts is there's no one style to mixed martial arts. You can come in from karate, taekwondo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo. You can come in from anything. It's really what works in an actual fight. And that's why I appreciate it so much, is so many of these styles are really traditional, meaning that they stick to a regimen of training styles that doesn't really evolve too much.
Right.
The cool thing about mixed martial arts is whatever works in that cage to win you that fight, abiding the rules, goes. And so it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And if you can't continue training the same way, or you'll get surpassed. So it's one of the cool things about mixed martial arts is that it's all the arts combined into one to what's effective.
Right.
So it's just finding a way to win in there, honestly.
What are you teaching at your gym?
Mixed martial arts.
Okay, so it is but will you define those arts that you're...
No, well, what's cool now is at the beginning you would go train judo somewhere, you'd go train jiu-jitsu somewhere, you'd go train your boxing, you'd get all your individual arts beforehand, and then you'd put them together yourself.
I see.
Now it's cool because the sport's evolved to a point where there is a ranking system in mixed martial arts.
Okay, oh, that's great
Absolutely.
to know. Yes.
And there is a way of teaching the ones that work. And so we have a curriculum and we have a system to where we teach what works in there. And that was put together by Greg Jackson, which is a world-renowned coach out of New Mexico. He teaches John Jones, Holly Holm, big UFC named people.
Right.
And so he put together a system and a ranking system that really teaches effective things that work in the cage. And it gives you a really solid base of how to move forward with mixed martial arts, so you don't have to piece it together yourself. So the curriculum we work on is mixed martial arts. We work on everything from jiu-jitsu on the ground, wrestling, judo, striking, everything, and that's been put together by him. And I went up and trained with him and got that experience, which was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you did that?
That was actually just last year.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
that's cool.
Yeah, the system the ranking system hasn't been around for a long, long time.
Right.
But whenever I was working with the other gym that I was working at, that was one of the main things. Me, Nick Hogan, and Jeremy Belk went up there and trained and got the instructor certification to be able to teach this system.
Wow.
So. Yeah.
Okay, I have so many questions ready. They're just like rapid fire. Okay, so once you're training here, where are fights? Where do you go?
It's interesting. We used to have fights here in town, and we would do them at the community center, and that's where I got my first 3 fights in, actually. And now, not so much. Victoria doesn't have as much fights anymore. Hopefully they will be getting some soon.
Right.
But now you have to outsource it to other cities, which is actually a good thing anyway, because it's better, in my opinion, to be able to go and expand with other cities, to other people.
Right.
And
For
really,
you, right. It's neat to travel and to see.
Absolutely. And so there's fights all over Texas, everywhere except Victoria right now. It's interesting.
Yes.
So they've got one coming up actually next month in July. Texas Clash is having MMA fights in Beeville, which is cool. And then there's one coming up in November, and I forget the city, Fort something here in Texas, and that's the next card that I'm looking to hopefully get on.
And you said the next card.
Yes.
So tell me about cards.
Yeah, a card is just another way of saying event. So it's just, the card is the list of people that are fighting.
Right.
And so that's just what the mixed martial artists.
All right, with that's okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I just know, how the, my only visual of how, mixed martial arts is ranked, or how the tournaments are played, was from Karate Kid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where you just saw them across the boards, and so I was like, is that kind of like the same thing?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
So
I'm glad that's never changed.
Yeah.
All right, I want to take you back to your first fight. Because you've been so honest. what is that like? What is it, the feeling after all of that training to get into a ring?
It's crazy.
Is it?
Yeah, it's addicting, but it's terrifying. And I think any fighter would tell you the same thing. If anyone told you that it wasn't terrifying, I think they'd be lying a little bit. Because you're going out there, you're putting everything on the line. What you win is so little compared to what you can lose. And meaning your health, you can really get injured in there. It's a really risky sport. And then also with just your embarrassment that you can lose in there. You train so hard, and so to get up in front of hundreds of people and lose would be pretty embarrassing. People, and especially in MMA, they tend to focus hard on your losses and not so much on your wins. And so it's just,
why is the culture like that?
It's weird. It's weird. You lose one time in mixed martial arts and the fans are against you. It's wild. And you can see it nowadays even with Conor McGregor and any of these big name fighters. They can have the best career ever and lose one fight and the whole world is against them. It's interesting. I don't know why the culture's like that. A lot of other sports aren't like that. Your team loses and
I giggle, but only in the sense that I think in some ways sometimes one is that we're just finicky people, but it really kind of brings me back to like the Roman age where you don't necessarily hate that person, but it's fun to kind of like rally.
For sure.
Against,
Absolutely. And we all have that. And that's one of the things that you kind of got to get used to in MMA as well, is for every fan you also have someone that doesn't want you to win.
And I only mean that in the way too, where I'm saying like, it's great learning tool as long as it's not like a bullying type of thing.
Absolutely.
It's like more of a, you can't please everyone all of the time. And I laughed again, just how finicky we are, that we're like, oh, he's lost once, and then now we're, you know what I'm saying? Now, and what you said was against him. And so I can imagine what that's like in the ring, is going out and booing. But to me, I almost have to smile at that, because I'm like, people are ridiculous, and I'm about to whip this guy's rear end. So, it'll be great. You'll be back on top again, that kind of thing. But the sport itself and seeing the audience, because I've been to live mixed martial art fights, which I encourage people to go to. I love watching it on television, but to see it and to be a part of it, it's incredible the amount of energy
that I agree with.
That is in that, just not even in the arena, but in the audience as well. For someone who just observes the human condition.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because I can feel that in there too.
Oh, really?
And so, absolutely. You really feel the crowd's energy when you're in there. It's almost uplifting and gives you energy to go out and compete. I remember actually, speaking of my first fight, I could feel everything every crowd's reaction, even in the middle of the fight. I'm real cerebral when I fight, and so I just tend to notice my surroundings. And in there, I remember getting hit the first time and hearing all of the crowd go, "Ooh," and that was motivating beyond belief. I was like, no, guys, y'all don't get to ooh me. I'm about to get my get back right now. And it's actually funny, because right when the crowd did that, I ended up turning to a new level and ended up winning and dominating him pretty quickly after that, because I didn't want to hear another ooh. So.
And isn't that interesting, right? The vibe.
It's wild. It's wild. My adrenaline is up now just thinking about it. And anytime I think about competing and getting up in front of hundreds of people that are going to have that energy, it's hard not to get those feelings that just start coming back. It's wild.
Do you become acquainted with the styles? Because one of the, I would think, disadvantages of mixed martial arts, but is really truly an advantage, is that, if you're in jiu-jitsu, okay, and that is your discipline, and that is your, mode of operation, then you will probably be familiar with the competitors that you have and their style or whatever of jiu-jitsu. What's interesting to me about mixed martial arts is, outside of maybe, you don't really know, or do you necessarily, what type of mixed martial arts this particular competitor is great at. In other words, there's such a far variance.
For sure. Now we do anyone that we're fighting, we
Right.
study.
Okay, do you?
Hard.
Good. Okay,
Yeah,
good. I'm glad-
absolutely.
yeah.
And so typically before the fight, I like to know my opponent's habits before he even walks into the cage, so
Right.
that it makes me more prepared to go in and face what he's going to bring to the table. So before fights, we're Googling the people, we're searching their old fights, we're watching their habits, we're figuring out what styles that they're ranked in, what they train
Right.
in, what they prefer. So one of the pros about it is everything's online now. And so anyone that I'm going against, I can very easily look up and see what he likes to do and make sure we don't do that. So that's kind of the cool
Right.
thing about it too, is yes and no. So we all have different styles, but once we know each other's styles, we can avoid them. And that's the cool thing too.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And how long have you been a mixed martial artist fighting
Fighting,
in the competitive field?
I started in 2015.
Okay.
And I started judo when I was 19, so that was 10 years ago. So in 2009. I trained for about 5 years, and at that point I decided I was ready to go ahead and compete. So yeah, about 4 years I've
Okay.
been fighting.
What have you learned?
That's a good question. I've learned a lot. I've really had to dive into myself a lot to be able to be confident enough to go in there and do that. You really have to believe in yourself. And so I've really learned to just believe in myself, and that's something that's very important to me because growing up, I didn't necessarily do that. I always was just a little bit hesitant on my abilities and my skills, and I didn't really trust that I was as good at anything that I was.
I see.
And so I think the main thing that I've learned throughout mixed martial arts is just to have confidence and to believe in yourself. And that really carries as far as in my daily life and anything I really do, that I know I'm
Right.
good enough to do
And
what
see,
I'm
that would have
doing.
been my next question, which is because I know that you teach children, and I want to make sure that we touch on that. But my next question was going to be, what advice would you give to 13-year-old Brandon now that you are where you are?
I would probably, I think that's it. I think I would just tell myself to believe in myself. And whatever you do, you commit fully, trust your abilities, and it'll take you much further than I think anything else would. You know, just having the confidence and the belief in yourself, it's really important. It's really important. You can halfway do things and
Right.
not trust yourself, and I feel like you'll never really succeed if you don't genuinely trust in yourself.
Right.
So I would just try to tell myself to be confident, be strong in everything that you decide to do, and really commit fully to everything that you're doing. There's no half stepping in life and in mixed martial arts. And so when you find something you want to do, just pursue it fully and trust in it. So,
Right. What is it like for you to teach littles?
You know, I
Because you
think
post a lot of pictures.
I
It makes me
do.
so
I
happy
do.
to
I
see
post so
how
many
proud you
pictures.
are of
People
your
give
class.
me a hard time for how many pictures I post, but
Oh,
to
I
me,
think it's awesome.
It's important to be able to
Yes.
share this experience with everyone else. But the kids, I think it's crazy. I didn't think that teaching the kids was going to be as beneficial to me as
Right.
it really has been. It's really been eye-opening for me to be able to be a good role model and a good guidance for these guys. Like I said, whenever I was a kid, I didn't have that.
Right.
And that's kind of what led me to martial arts as an adult is I never had that guidance and that
Sure.
male role model in my life. So it's been absolutely amazing. My students, I can see that they genuinely look up to me. And so what that does for me is it sets a really high standard on how I need to live my life. It really, as good as I am for them, it's crazy. And I'm not to just talk about myself, but for all the benefits that I give them, I feel like I reap 10 times
I
in
understand.
return.
Yes.
So just by teaching them, I'm learning constantly. and just becoming a better person by realizing that they need someone to be a good role model
Right.
for. So it's amazing. It's probably one of the coolest things that I've gotten into as an adult, and it's not something that I even thought I was going to get
Right.
into.
Right.
So it's been enlightening.
Yeah, but you truly are a success. You have such a tremendous success story and
Yeah.
such a sweet way about coming, you know what I'm saying, about coming through everything that you did to be where you are. It's just so much more about fighting. It's such a much more of a spiritual journey.
I think you're right. I think that's one of the most interesting things about the whole thing too, is that throughout this mixed martial arts thing, it's been so much more than mixed martial arts. It's been a way of life, a way of growth. I've learned more lessons outside of MMA through MMA than
Right.
in MMA. It's
Right.
wild. It's wild. I catch myself all the time just explaining to my students, this isn't just in here. This
Right.
is outside. This is everywhere. We had this discussion the other day about facing your fears, and it made me realize this isn't just your opponent that you have to be scared of. This is
Right.
everything in life. You can either run from your fears or you can face them
Face
head
them.
on, and running from them is going to give you so much more regret than how easy it is to just face these things. So it's amazing. There's a bunch of lessons like that, and that I just constantly find almost every time I end up talking about MMA, I end up realizing, oh, this isn't just MMA.
Right.
This is every day. This
Right.
is everything
Is
we
it
do.
cool to be the teacher and still be learning?
Yes, and I think that's probably that's the coolest thing too. And that's one thing that I am constantly still doing is learning.
Right.
And I think that that mentality should go with all of us everywhere. Is you can never stop learning, you can never stop progressing, you can never get good enough.
Right.
There's always something to get better at, and so that has been amazing for me to be a student and be a teacher.
And teacher as well, yes.
Absolutely.
What age groups do you teach? All ages?
So I have 2 classes for kids right now. They're from 4 to 8-year-olds, which is my little Tiny Tigers
Oh,
class.
I love your pictures of these
They're
littles.
they're awesome. That class they're my high energy class. They are on another level.
Oh, I bet they are.
And then I have my 9 to 15-year-olds, and these kids are really, they're a little bit more older. They're a little older, so they're a little bit more mature, and they're more so for the fighting
Right.
and to learn fighting. The younger kids, we're really working on basics and fundamentals. We're working on footwork and balance and just things to get them ready for the next class, honestly. So there's definitely big differences in the 2 classes, but really cool to see the differences and watch the growth as they
Right.
progress from one to the other.
Yes. And are you teaching any adults?
I am. So I'm doing privates right now. I do group privates and just solo privates for adults. And then I've had a lot of demand for doing women's classes. There's a lot of women out there that really want to learn how to defend themselves
I
out
did
there.
see your shirt. I thought that was really interesting. Stop
Absolutely.
the violence. Real men don't hit women.
Absolutely, and that's always been very important to me. I think in this culture nowadays, it's almost become normalized for, I wouldn't say a man to hit a woman, but so many people nowadays that I see online and see talking, they're so open and vocal about, well, if a woman hits me, I'll hit them back, you know, equal rights and all this. And that's not something I could ever get behind. I had to witness domestic violence as a child, and that's one thing and why I did these shirts and do my
Right.
walkout with this, because I donate 10% to the National Coalition of Domestic Violence.
Oh, wow.
But it's been very important to me to not only be an advocate for that, but to spread the word, because that's not something I feel like should be normalized in
Right.
society. I think that us as men, we should hold ourselves to a high standard. And getting even or getting equal is not the way, it's an abuse of power.
Right.
And that's one thing too that throughout martial arts is that I've learned is that although you have these skills and abilities, it's up to us not to abuse them.
Right.
And that's what defines us as characters, in my opinion.
Do you find that to be true? Because I feel like most people, most men in particular that I've met who are advanced in their disciplines have said, you know what, it's knowing how to fight and then knowing that it's not necessary anymore to fight, which I
Absolutely.
thought was really interesting.
Yeah, and the more I've learned how to fight, and the more I've had MMA
Right.
fights and really honed my skills, that's been more and more prevalent.
Right.
I
Now,
get in-
what you do though is a little bit different because you're in there to fight. So
Right.
I can totally understand.
Right.
Also, having the skill set and being like, it's kind of fun too.
Let's use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
I think it's like, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's in our nature, kind of. It's.
I think so.
When I first saw MMA, I think that I know, as a matter of fact, that I was with women, and the idea that you were bare knuckle, excuse me, and you didn't have padding and things like that. I think it was really. I saw a lot of this, but I was intrigued because I said, "This is it. Like this is this was our natural way. It's who we are as human
I
beings.
agree.
It's part of our evolution."
Every animal.
Right, I was going to
You
say
watch-
animalistic, but I didn't want it to sound. That was the word I was trying to
For sure.
avoid.
Well,
right.
I mean, and we are.
Right.
We're just a different type of animal,
Right.
but any animal out there, including humans, it's in their nature to want to compete and to
Right.
want to fight each other.
Well,
It's
see,
so weird.
And for me, it was looking at the natural way that human beings fight. So I'm much more put off to certain things like we're boxing and the gloves and things like that, where I'm like,
Right.
this is very, very different. And I feel like there's such a, not that boxing is not intellectual, because absolutely it is. But I think that there's a lot of thinking that's going on constantly
Absolutely.
in that ring.
You know, one of the interesting things though about that is I'm really anti-confrontational, like extremely anti-confrontational. I'd rather, and especially if it's not in a ring, in an agreed upon setting,
Right.
I really don't want to get into confrontation. I would much rather just walk away from that situation. It's much.
Oh, even as a fighter. Oh.
Yeah, even and I work security a lot, and it drives me crazy. I'd much rather not have to use it. Of course, I'm willing to if I have
Right.
to, but it's much. I'd rather not, to be honest with you, and I'd rather not escalate things. So now, and that's the cool thing is, ever since I've started fighting people that know how to fight back, I don't view it. And that's another thing that people question me. I don't view it as trying to fight anymore. I view
Okay.
it as an art form. Like,
Right.
I'm going out there to compete, but I'm not going out there with the mentality that like a barbaric mentality. I really do. I look at the techniques. I look at the styles. I look at it like it's ballet almost. I
Right.
really study it like it's an art, and I think that's why they call it, you know, mixed martial arts, and they
Arts.
call it martial arts, because it's not this brutal. I want to hurt you. I want to hurt you. There's an actual art form behind these techniques and these abilities, and to see the body's movements and all kinds of techniques it's really interesting.
I've seen a lot in the live fighting too, is when someone loses and the winner has kneeled and prayed, or has just kneeled and it was just a very, I felt very spiritual, just very almost respectful, like the most respect that I've
Absolutely.
ever seen in a ring
Absolutely.
has been through the mixed martial arts.
Absolutely, and that's the way that I fight. I'm not in there to toot my own horn or boast or brag. I'm in there to compete, and I respect the man that I'm across. I want to see what his abilities are, and I want to see what my abilities are. But at the end of the day, once we've settled that, I have nothing but respect and love for
Right.
that person. Anybody that I've fought so far, some of my closest friends are people that I've fought now.
Oh, yes.
You get this weird bond as well after you've fought somebody that kind of brings you together, more so than most relationships that I've had, because
Right.
we've shared a mutual agreement, and we've both tested ourselves, and we both needed each other to test ourselves to that level. So I think that's where a lot of that respect comes from.
Oh, that's
is,
such a thoughtful way to,
yeah,
to say
that
that.
without him, I couldn't have done this. Yeah, I couldn't have tested my abilities, and we're able to do it in a safe environment, you know, semi-safe environment. It is a cage, which kind of throws people off into thinking that we're locked into this,
Sure, the barbaric
this
part,
animal.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I think that's just part of the marketing. But at the end of the day, we're just in an enclosed environment with a referee keeping both of us safe once something happens, and it's not this I want to hurt you real
Right.
bad. It's really there's a lot of mutual respect with a lot of us.
So I'm seeing a lot more women MMA fighters. You were saying too earlier, and I apologize if I just switched gears with you, that women, you teach women self-defense classes. So I want to make sure that I touch back on that. But for women in mixed martial arts, what are some of the new trends that you're seeing? What's coming out?
It's crazy because the women are getting just as good as the men. 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. I
Right.
used to look at women's mixed martial arts and almost turn my head, and not because of a disrespect thing, but
Right.
like I said, I look at it as an art. And so
Right.
I'm always looking at technique. I'm looking at what the body is doing, how the body's moving, how it reacts, what's happening in the fight. I always look at it scientifically and try to figure out where the skills lie. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed with women in mixed martial arts is that they're not behind anymore. At the beginning, they used to be at a lower level where their technique, it wasn't there. And a lot of people thought that, women shouldn't be doing this. They don't have the natural ability that men do. They can't perform like men
Right.
do. And
But
that's
you're
not
also
the
paired
case.
with the same female who has the same, right?
Right, but even now it's not the case anymore. These women have come out and they've shown us that they're just as good as the men. They have just as much technique. They train just as hard, and it's interesting. I wouldn't say most, but a lot of my students are girls.
Right.
And I don't know if you've noticed in my pictures, but I've got more girls than I've got guys. And it's really cool to see. And these girls are out there competing with the guys and beating the guys. It's really interesting to see just the evolution and how fast they were able to do it.
Are you going to, are you doing it currently, or is there a plan for in the future taking any of the ones that you've trained to fights as their coach?
So, yes and
Okay.
no.
Okay.
So the only reason why I say that is because a lot of the kids that I'm training now, mixed martial arts isn't something that I will coach them, but it's not something, as far as competing, it's not something I will push people towards.
Right.
There's a certain group of kids and people like me that gravitate towards it, and they need a productive outlet like that. But as far as the risk factor / reward factor,
Right.
it's not something that as far as competing, I would recommend
I
to
see.
a lot of kids.
I
Now, I
see.
do understand that there's a lot of kids that need it, and like me, I needed it as a kid and would have needed
Right.
it. But it's not something that I would advocate to people that don't have things going on,
I see what you're saying. Right.
warranting going in there and risking as much as fighters risk, and especially with, just the grand scale of MMA and the risk reward factor. But yes, anyone that is looking to compete, I will take them, and I would love to coach them as far as going forward with that. We do actually have competitions coming up as far as kickboxing. So I'm
Okay.
taking them to a kickboxing tournament next month that
Oh,
we're
really?
doing here in town.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
that's
really
here in
neat.
Victoria.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's really cool, actually. We got together with 2 other gyms, and we're throwing an event. What it is a striking expo.
Okay.
And so we're going to be competing against other gyms in town.
Right.
And we're all coming together. We're putting our egos aside. We're coming together, and we're doing an event together. And it's really just to go out there and show that you can compete, have a good time, and it doesn't.
Yes.
There doesn't have to be a bunch of animosity between
Right.
everybody.
Right. And between gyms and between
Yeah.
kids and all of that.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is this is my last question. It's kind of a big one.
All good.
Which is what is your dream? What's your dream, Brandon?
It's changing every day.
That's perfect. That's a great answer.
What is my dream? My dream would be to get into the UFC.
Yes.
It's been a roller coaster of a ride through thought processes as far as getting there.
Right.
But one thing that I've realized is that I do have the ability. I have the skill, and it took a lot of training and working with other people that are headed to the UFC and in the UFC to realize that. Like I said, with doubting myself is something that I've always done, and even as you start to believe in yourself at a lower level, I think there's always that upper level that you say, oh, well, I can do this, but I probably can't do this. And so I'm still going to say that my dream is to be in the UFC, and I think that it is a possibility.
I love that. Is there anything that we can do as a community to support you?
So anytime that I fight, just show up. Whether it's to cheer me on, whether it's to boo me, whatever it is, just be there.
But just don't make those noises. Oh,
you know what? You can do that too. That's okay, because like I said, that was motivation.
Well, do you print what your fight schedule is? Do you put it? Yeah. Do you post it?
So any event I have coming up, I'm real heavy on social media, and so any event I have coming up, I'm always posting. The next one I'm looking to do is in November, so I'll be posting that one.
All right, I promise you that when you get closer to November, holler at me and we'll post something again on Southbridge Street Live. I'd love for us to try, to get together to rally to support you in this.
For sure, that'd be awesome.
Well, this has just been amazing. Brandon, I'm so glad that you came to sit down and share your story with me.
I really appreciate your time.
I'm absolutely honored, and a shout out to Rick Torres for his incredible mentorship. That's fascinating. All right, so can I do the back of your shirt? Can I do? Okay, all right, guys, I'm gonna try it. All right, so introducing Brandon, the White Dog Wakefield.
That was pretty good.
From Victoria, Texas.
You sound just like the last announcer. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. Thank you guys so much for watching Southbridge Street Live.